Yes, and with us right now on Skype is UNWRA spokesman Chris Gunness in Jerusalem. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Chris, what is the current situation in the Yarmouk camp?
The situation currently in Yarmouk is dire and getting worse with each hour that passes, because 18,000 civilians trapped in the camp, amongst them 3,500 children. There is fierce fighting in the streets. We have unconfirmed reports of aerial bombardment, which is why we in UNWRA have called, and Pierre Krenbel, the Commissioner General, has been in the last minutes in the Security Council in New York, calling for a pause, calling for maximum restraint by the parties so that there can be an evacuation. There already has been an evacuation of a small number of people. We've been administering 94 people, 43 women, 20 children, and the rest civilians who managed to get out. And we hope that there will be further evacuations because the situation is beyond inhumane.
Chris, explain to me, when you hear the numbers, when you see the numbers, it's and you see that a Palestinian delegation is going there and doing what? What can any one of us actually do when we see the brutality, when we see children on the streets, when we see that there is nobody cares if it's a child, if it's a woman, if it's a man, the value of life there is nothing. So how come the world, or how can the world actually help?
Look, UNWRA is used to dealing with Palestinian refugees wherever they may be across the region. Don't forget that we look after refugees in Gaza, which saw this appalling war over the summer. We look after refugees living under occupation in the West Bank. We look after refugees in Lebanon, where they are treated appallingly. And, you know, go to some of the refugee camps in Lebanon. They're some of the most deprived places in the Middle East. But we cannot lose hope in UNWRA, and we will not lose hope. Don't forget that yesterday in the early hours, a small number of people, civilians, were evacuated. I can understand the nihilistic despair that informs your question, but we cannot buy into that. We in UNWRA will remain hopeful. We have to. If we abandon hope, we abandon the Palestinians in Yarmouk, and we will not do that. Let's pray that Ahmed Majdalani and others can see the sense. Let's hope that the members of the Security Council, they know exactly who they are, can bring pressures to bear on the parties on the ground. Those pressures exist. You don't have to be a scientist to work out what they are. Let's hope that those pressures can be brought to bear, and that we can continue to have some humanitarian space in which we can do further evacuations. There have been some. We need more.
You know, Chris, try to explain to me, how does it work in a place? Because let's say in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank or in any other places, we are dealing with terror organizations, but we are dealing with terror organizations that are not that brutal. When we're dealing with people, I don't know if to call them people, and this organization, this horrific organization called the IS, how do you start even the work? How do you start evacuating people from the hands of these animals? And again, I will say that I will be untrue to animals by calling them that.
Well, we have to work with what we have on the ground, and we don't have the luxury of being able to stand back and to trade insults with these people. We have a job to do on the ground. To begin with, we need humanitarian access, so we have no choice but to try and work with what we have on the ground to get that access. UNWRA has been unable to get into the camp for the last week since this intense fighting broke out. We need to have that access, and we have no choice but to work with what we have on the ground, and we will continue to do that because there is now an extreme humanitarian imperative to get aid to those who need it and to evacuate the women, the sick, the elderly, the children, the dying, civilians of all sorts who need to be brought out of the battle zone.
Anyone is trying to protect the Palestinians there? Any Palestinian fighters? Somebody who's trying to protect this refugee camp?
Look, protection is an extremely large word.
Yes, of course.
And for us, protection is about protecting rights and protecting civilians. So yes, there are armed groups in the camp. There are Palestinian armed groups in the camp. But when we in UNWRA talk about protection, we talk about international protection. We talk about protecting people in accordance with international law. And that is why we say that the parties on the ground, I know it's easy to be cynical and nihilistic and pessimistic, but the fact is we have seen some evacuations, we have seen protection in action. You can see from the pictures that the situation in the camp is desperate. Nonetheless, we've had some evacuations and we need more.
Yes, Chris Gunness, thank you very, very much, and continue doing your job. Thank you very much.